I discovered 3 disturbing true stories where police failed to intervene and horror took over. I never should have opened that door. The darkness seeped in like a heavy blanket, smothering everything around me. It felt wrong, like a whispering shadow urging me to step back. But curiosity gnawed at me, a ravenous animal that thrived on the thrill of the unknown. My routine was simple. I'd come home after work, toss my keys on the table, and sink into the comfort of my couch. The TV flickered in the background, a dull glow amidst the creeping shadows. But that evening was different. I found an old, rusted doorknob on the ground. I could feel the chill radiating from it, colder than the air around me. As I turned it in my hand, the hairs on my arms stood up. The floor creaked beneath me, echoing in the silence of my apartment. Had I heard something, or was it just my imagination? I shook my head. No, it was just an old house settling. But still, my heart raced. Whispers danced around me, chilling my spine. Each gust of wind seemed to carry a warning. Slithering noises crept up from the corners of my mind. A faint rustling, like something alive, somewhere near but hidden. I felt hunted. Cold sweat broke on my brow. Shadows flickered, twisting along the walls. My breath came faster now. What was happening? Then, I thought of the stories I had read about the police. Tales of indifference that left communities vulnerable. Of lives shattered simply because someone didn't care enough to check twice. I couldn't shake the thought. What if something terrible had happened to someone nearby? What if someone needed help, but no one came? The fear squeezed my chest tighter. Sudden banging echoed above me, loud, jarring. Was that a door slamming? Or a scream? My heart thudded violently in my chest. I should call for help. But the phone felt heavy in my hand, a weight I couldn't lift. I dropped it, panic rising like bile. I needed to know what was lurking beyond that door. I took a deep breath, turned on my heel, and faced the darkness. And then, in the dim light, I saw a figure. A shape hovering just beyond the threshold. A strange silence swallowed the air. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. The shadow shifted. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The shadow did not retreat, it clung to the darkness like a predator sizing up its prey. I blinked, trying to decipher the figure, but the dim light teased my vision, distorting shape and form. It was tall, unnaturally elongated, bending at odd angles that defied anatomy. My stomach churned, and the overwhelming urge to flee battled with a magnetic pull to move closer. Who are you? My voice trembled, barely breaking the suffocating silence. No answer came, just an oppressive chill that enveloped me, pricking my skin with the icy touch of an unseen hand. My courage wavered as the figure edged further into view, its face hidden beneath a veil of darkness, yet the outline of sunken eyes bore down upon me like twin black holes, draining the warmth from the room. A grotesque smile creased its features. I stumbled back, the rusted doorknob slicing into my palm, a sharp reminder of my folly. I turned, desperate to escape the unknowable horror that now occupied my threshold. But below that door lay a stairwell, a small wooden door I had never noticed before, the wood aged and threatening in its unassuming humbleness. It seemed to breathe, corresponding with my rapid heartbeats, as if it held the very air that separated me from whatever existed below. Instinct demanded I flee, yet an insatiable curiosity clawed at my mind. What horror awaited in the next room? My heart raced as I made the decision. I pushed through the shadows, ignoring the creeping fear that wrapped around my throat, threatening to choke me with every step. As I descended the creaking steps, an unholy odor wafted up, a mix of rot and decay that clawed at my senses. I gagged, bile rising, but I pressed on, shackling myself with dread as the darkness thickened around me. My phone felt inconceivable now, the glow of its screen revealing nothing but the inky blackness layered around me. I regretted dropping it. The lower I went, the more alive the air felt. It prickled my skin, filled with an electric tension. I reached the bottom, where a blinding light flickered on and off, revealing what seemed to be walls lined with newspaper clippings. My breath caught as I recognized the names of missing persons, people whose stories of desperation were written in jagged articles dated years apart. Each piece spoke of loss, the chilling reminder of lives abandoned by a system charged with protection. Who was this shadow? Did it have a part in their fate? One clipping caught my attention, the headline screaming a name I hadn't seen in years: Gina Hart. A voice echoed in my mind. She was a girl from my childhood, lost in the dark shadows of our town, her fate a whispered echo of grief. I roamed the room, fingertips tracing the jagged edges of each article, each story a warning woven through the chill. Then came the sound, a soft sigh so faint, it could have been mistaken for the ambient creaks of the old house around me. But there was something more, a murmur that seduced my ears, entwining with those whispers I had first heard. It wasn't a figment of my imagination anymore, it felt tangible, a tangible presence that thrummed with a hungry vibration. How many more? It whispered, echoing in an unsettling harmony with the rustling papers that I froze. The air thickened, and dread washed over me as realization dawned. The figure from before, its unseen eyes watching, waiting a reminder that I might be next if I didn't leave now. I pivoted, my breath a near silent plea for traction on the stairway that felt more like a spiral into hell. Suddenly, the light flickered and extinguished, plunging me into consuming darkness. Panic seized me, and in the blackness, I could feel a presence drawing near, the oppressive weight of its malevolence pressing down. I sprinted back up the stairs, gasping for air, praying that I could escape the grip of the shadows. As I reached the last step, something cold gripped my ankle, pulling me backward. My mouth opened in a silent scream as I felt the darkness wrap around me, tendrils of shadow slithering over my skin, dragging me down, deeper into its embrace. And in that moment, as the world faded into that ravenous void, the chilling sound of laughter echoed around me, mocking, merciless. Then everything went silent. Awakening was a disorienting experience. It was as though time had collapsed, leaving me in a state of lingering terror, wrapped in a cocoon of darkness and dread. I blinked, trying to pull together the scattered pieces of my mind, only to realize I was no longer on that staircase at the threshold of despair. Instead, I was bound within an expanse where shadows loomed heavy, an unsettling stillness pulsing around me. My wrists felt raw against coarse fibers, ropes twisting savagely. I squirmed, panic clawing anew at my throat, sending fear racing through my veins. Adrenaline erupted, and I twisted my body, trying to find my bearings in this nightmare. The air was thick, infused with an unbearable sense of foreboding, as if the essence of despair itself had seeped into the very walls that confined me. A flickering light broke the void, oscillating shadows around me like fractured memories. The room had no corners, no edges, it was a vast black pit, almost as if reality itself had unraveled. And then I saw him, the figure from before, emerging from the edges of the fading light. He stood there with that grotesquely insidious smile adorning his almost translucent face, the abyss of his eyes glistening, teasing the horrors they contained. "You've come back to play," he crooned, the echo of his voice wrapping around me like chains, compelling and sinister. "Get away from me." My voice, a strangled cry, filled the emptiness, but the laughter that filled the void in response was relentless. The sound filled the abyss, amplifying my fear, my isolation. I tugged at my bindings, panic blurring my focus. "You don't own me. Let me go." The figure stepped forward, taking a form that seemed to flicker, remnants of past victims gliding through his skin, their mouths moving in desperation, yet no sound escaped their lips, only hopeless gazes imploring me to remember them, to save them. Something sharp nipped at the edges of my memory. Each face was a story. I recognized some. Gina's was among them, her eyes wide and pleading as shadows of bygone years hung around her, whispering secrets of stolen lives. "I've gathered them all for you," he said, voice smooth yet dripping with malice. Now, you must decide who will stay and who will leave. A frigid chill gripped my heart. What do you mean? Who will stay? The darkness thickened, and a disorienting rush of memories of the missing flooded my mind. Gina, her laughter echoing in sunlit parks, a boy from school, caught laughing before he vanished, a woman from the grocery store who once helped an elderly man cross the street. Friends and strangers, all lost to the void, you must choose. The smile widened, revealing rows of jagged, yellow teeth that seemed to absorb the light around them. You can save one. One shall escape, while the rest remain forever in my collection. Collection? This isn't a game. You're a monster. My anger surged, burning against the fear that threatened to consume me. Ah, but they are part of me now. Their souls resonate with the essence of anguish, and you, my dear, are the key, he taunted, dark eyes fixed on me with a predatory fixation. With every word, the air thickened, saturated with despair, until the very fibers of the place felt alive with the prisoner's agonized cries. They had long since stopped attempting to escape, their strength wrenched from them with every passing moment. Suddenly, an anguished scream echoed through the hollow expanse, a fresh sound that pierced the darkness. I felt the world around me convulse, as if the walls themselves were quaking in response. Then, another flicker of light, and I saw another door emerge from the shadows, the surface splintered and decaying. Chains shook from the weight of darkness and whispers I could not decipher, but the sense of urgency pulled at me fiercely. My heart raced as I weighed my options. The choice was becoming clearer. The shadows drew closer, thirsty for more souls, yet there was a chance for one, for Gina, for whoever else still hung in uncertainty. The figure behind me laughed, a cacophonous chorus of the damned echoing through the air. Hurry! Decide, or they'll consume you entirely. My breath came out in shaky gasps, adrenaline spinning my thoughts like a whirlwind. With trembling hands, I reached for the doorknob, unsure of what lay beyond, the desperate pleas of my choices ringing in my ears, and I could feel the cold breath of shadows creeping ever closer as I turned the knob. The door swung open, revealing a blinding light that forced me to shield my eyes. But before I could step through, icy fingers gripped my wrist, pulling me back with an iron grasp. Choose wisely, he hissed, and I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes boring into me. In that moment, terror clawed at my insides, and I asked the very question that would shatter the fragile thread of my sanity: what price would I pay for the choice I was about to make? And just as I gathered the breath to scream my decision, the entity whispered again, "The shadows never forget." Then everything began to dissolve, a cacophony of dark laughter filling the void, and I struggled against the unyielding grasp that now felt as familiar as my own skin. But I could not escape. I was torn between choices, drowning in shadows, and yet, the light remained before me, beckoning, as the figure allowed the shadows to tighten their hold around me in a terrifying embrace. With my heart pounding and time slipping away, I lost that moment of choice, following a path to darkness that might never end. The grip on my wrist tightened, icy fingers digging into the flesh as the shadows murmured around me, a chorus of desperation clawing at my sanity. I could feel the weight of their sorrow, years of forgotten sadness pressing down on my chest, as the ghastly figure leaned closer. "You've wasted enough time," he hissed, the acrid stench of decay wafting from his mouth like a noxious cloud. "What will it be, darling?" My thoughts spiraled into chaos, names surged through my mind: Gina, the boy with the crooked smile, the frail woman crossing the street. Each face morphed into a desperate echo, but the flickering door remained a beacon, a promise of salvation and escape, though I feared what lay on the other side. "Just one," the figure growled, his eyes narrowing as he sensed my hesitation. "You have everything to gain and nothing to lose, or perhaps it's the opposite, A more primal kind of dread sank into the pit of my stomach as I felt the shadows begin to swirl around my ankles, creeping up my body like a thick fog. A flicker of doubt seized me: would it be selfish to save one when countless others hung in the balance? But then the frigid whispers of the trapped tugged at my heart. They needed to be acknowledged, revered. They didn't deserve to be mere weapons in the hands of the malevolent. "2 can't," I stuttered, the words barely managing to push through my quaking lips. With a sharp tug, he ripped my gaze back to the pulsating darkness, where screams resonated, warped and disembodied. Choose or surrender? He demanded, and a wave of despair crashed over me as if to say that hesitation was just as damning as making a choice. The room warped around us, shadows morphing from anguished wails to twisted faces screaming silently, begging silently, clawing to be remembered. A sudden clarity emerged from the chaos, if not now, then when? How could I let more souls slip away? But then I heard its rattling chains morphing into cries of agony that coiled at my feet, twining up my body like vines of despair. My heart raced before a sudden explosion of darkness enveloped the figure, engulfing him in a swirling void of his own creation. The darkness was intoxicating, spinning around me until I felt weightless, boundless. Suddenly, I caught a fleeting glimpse of something outside that shining door, a visage, mere inches away, imprinted in the brightness. I squinted, straining to discern the shape, and felt a pang of recognition wash over me. It was Gina, her giggles echoing, teasing, alive and vibrant, "Help me." She pleaded, her arms stretched toward me. I could see her vibrant smile, so full of life, and yet, the moment was undercut by the darkness behind her, swirling with unspeakable fury. "No!" I screamed, forcing myself back toward him, back to the ought-to-be choice. "Take me instead, damn you!" The figure laughed with genuine delight, twisting shadows into a frenzied dance. "Ah, sacrifice! Humanity's sweetest nectar. You take their place in the darkness? How noble!" With a roar of laughter, he released me, and I stumbled through the doorway, no longer bright but filled with darkness that consumed me whole, swallowing my screams. I barely registered the transition, the light extinguishing as a wave of despair washed over me, clinging to my very essence, but as silence enveloped me, something shifted in the air, a feeling of presence lingering behind me, cold and insidious. I turned slowly, dread curling in my stomach as I dared to peer back through the darkness. The shadows swirled with renewed fervor, and through the suffocating blackness, something else began to emerge, a figure less grotesque yet infinitely more troubling. It was indistinct, featureless, and yet I felt the weight of evil pressing closer, smothering the breath out of me. "Choices have consequences," a voice whispered, one that reverberated within the depths of hell itself. "You should have stayed with those poor souls." My heart thundered as I realized, too late, that I had traded one horror for another. The formless being extended a shadowy hand in my direction, and I felt myself step forward. Almost uncontrollably, but then I saw a flickering light behind it, brighter than anything else in this consuming void. Desperation surged within me once more, and I clung to that sliver of hope. Yet as I reached for the light, the shadows surged forward, and screams filled my ears, loud and deafening, each voice a reminder of what awaited if I faltered. "Come closer," the form whispered, an unholy invitation laced with lies, and I felt the pull of the shadows beneath my feet intensifying. They swirled around my ankles, and I realized with dread that I was losing the fight. The price for my choice was spiraling beyond my grasp, and as panic struck, I felt something tear in the fabric of my fate, an unraveling that might consume us all, a darkness that sought to wield me like a puppet. With a final surge of defiance, I bolted greedily for the light, just as the shadows lunged forward, howling, fangs waiting to taste my dread. But in that moment of hope, I witnessed something that chilled my blood. In the light stood faces of all those lost: Gina, the boy, the woman, each one merging, their shadows stretching toward me as the darkness stretched to engulf them, and with my heart pounding in my ears, I muttered, "What have I done?" Then the world shattered, and I was thrust into an infinity of darkness as the screams echoed all around, the ultimate choice revealing far-reaching consequences that would descend upon not just me, but every soul within reach of the ghastly figure's grasp. As I fell deep into the abyss, a furious laughter resonated around me, drowning out the calls for help, thrusting me into a chilling morass of shadows where I would lose the fight for salvation and perhaps find a new horror waiting. The laughter echoed ever closer, and just before everything closed in, I felt a cold breath against my ear, whispering my name. The breath was so frigid, it sent a shivering shockwave through my spine, leaving me paralyzed as darkness enveloped my senses like a wet towel suffocating over my mouth. I was suspended in a void, my heart thundering in desperate rhythms as the whispers grew louder, morphing from indistinguishable babble to resounding cries that clawed at the edges of my mind. Help us. The chant was visceral, their voices twining together as if woven into the very fabric of the darkness, a quilt of agony drawn taut around my consciousness. Each cry poured over me like a torrent, twisting my thoughts and filling my chest with an impending sense of doom. Suddenly, sensations crashed into existence. A damp, cold floor pressed against my palms, and I forced myself to breathe through the overwhelming stench of rust and something putrid, as if I had fallen into a forgotten crypt. I pushed myself to sit upright, my hands shaking as they touched the contours of the space, confirming that I was not alone. Vague forms shifted around me, remnants of those who were once vibrant and alive, now reduced to silhouettes trapped within the darkness. Faces swam into view, flickering like candle flames, their eyes filled with sorrow, mouths forming desperate sounds that never made it past the void. They looked to me for salvation, yet the shadows thrummed with the reminder that I had made my choice. Innocence had been bartered for despair. Please, a voice broke through the clamor, weak and tremulous. I turned, my heart racing as I recognized the voice. Gina. But she was not the lively girl I once knew. The shadows had stiffened her features, making her expression one of agonizing entrapment. You shouldn't have come here. You should have stayed on the other side. You've brought this upon us. What do you mean? I gasped, stumbling back from the weight of her words, the sting of betrayal clutched tightly in my throat. I thought I was saving you. I felt the shadows tighten around me, pulsing with anger at my naivete. Gina forced herself closer, each inch costing them dearly, her once vibrant face contorting as darkness coiled tighter around her. There are those who wish to steal souls like ours, but they cannot take what already belongs to the shadows. You've only given him more power. The earth shuddered beneath me, and I fought against the encroaching panic, each breath becoming a battle. Who? What are you talking about? Suddenly, the oppressive weight in the void grew heavier, an unseen force swirling into a cyclone that closed around us, a hub of malice that coalesced into a single image, the terrible figure from before, cloaked in shadows, eyes glinting like black coals. You offer so much, don't you? But they are not for you to save. The laughter resonated once more, echoing from every corner of the abyss, mocking the loss woven into the fabric of my being. Your desperation does not fill a heart, child, it only provides a feast for those who hunger. No. I screamed, the noise barely piercing through the manic whirl of madness. Stop this. I didn't want this. But the figure surged forward, an overwhelming mass of shadows stretching from its outstretched hand. The voices around me twisted, morphing from cries for help to laughter, cruel and sadistic. They were not just lost souls, they were betrayers, lost to the whims of a dark and unfathomable hunger. Every ounce of life in me screamed to run, but as I desperately turned to flee, a cold hand gripped my arm, stopping me in my tracks. I looked down, and it was not a face I recognized. The boy, the one with the crooked smile who had once brought me joy, now bared his teeth in a grotesque imitation of delight, a marionette of despair trapped in a macabre play. Don't leave us, he pleaded, his voice a haunting whisper. You can save us. You're the key. What? Confusion twisted within my mind, but before I could pull away, the shadows began pulling me closer toward him, toward the darkness that yawned hungrily in the depths, awaiting new prey. Make a choice, the figure continuously prodded, teasing with its reach. You have me, or you have them. But you can't have both. Gina's haunting plea echoed within. Please don't leave us. You are our salvation. But at what cost? My fingers clawed at the floor, but the shadows tightened their hold, already making their verdict. Closing in, every heartbeat throbbed faster, each choice fracturing my resolve further. I'm not rejecting you. I cried, but the shadows grew sentient, driving thorns through my thoughts, while the lost souls seemed to smile with an anguish that radiated through the darkness. Join us. Become part of the shadows. Their screams turned to shrill laughter, pulling me deeper. I clenched my hands, fighting against the chaotic forces that sought to rip me apart, as the boy's crooked grin grew ever wider and the figure loomed ominously, hungry to devour my fate. Choose. The darkness laughed, but it wasn't just a shadowy chorus, it was a cacophony of terror tapping into the fragility of my spirit. And then, unexpectedly, towering behind me formed a tremendous Achinga doorway shuddering with light. An escape. Just as the shadows seized my feet, yanking me back toward the laughing figure, all I could think was, what if salvation held the greatest horror of all? And then the choice shattered my realisha: leap into the light, or surrender to the all-consuming dark. But in reaching for the glimmering doorway, I felt the icy breath thrum against my neck, a low hiss seeping into my mind, promising visceral truths I may never survive. Stay, it whispered, its ghostly fingers clasping my flesh in a grip colder than death. The darkness enveloped me completely, and just as I teetered on the precipice of choice, the whispers crescendoed into a revolt, crying out for the souls that would pay the price for my decision. The laughter echoed louder, encircling me in a web of despair, and with a single malefic sentence, everything shifted into an unspeakable horror: you now belong to them. Then, my vision blackened, and just as the weight of the abyss pressed down, I felt their despair merging with mine, spiriting away whatever sliver of humanity remained. The darkness around me cradled my consciousness, distorting time and space as a pulsating malaise seeped into my being. Faces swirled in the void: Gina, the boy with the crooked smile, and countless others, their expressions frozen in abject terror. They receded and re-emerged, disappearing into the corners of my vision, drawing my panic deeper as their whispers splintered into agonizing cries: help us! Help us! Their voices melded, morphing into a haunting, melodic refrain that raked through my mind with jagged claws. I squeezed my eyes shut, the light behind the doorway bleeding through my eyelids, as if offering a glimpse of the freedom that had been snatched away. But then the laughter returned, more sinister than before, echoing with a perverse glee that gnawed at my insides. The figure loomed closer, its features becoming a grotesque tapestry of human agony, merging and warping into a nightmare beyond comprehension. Do you feel how easily they are torn between desire and dread? It crooned, almost tenderly, its voice smooth as poisoned honey. They long for a release that will never come, just as you will never escape, child of hope, child of regret. Stop! I gasped, my voice hoarse and small. But the shadows fell towards me like drowning waves, their weight paralyzing, suffocating my very essence. Then, visceral pain erupted in my chest, as if the darkness was forging itself into my bones. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound that emerged was the echo of every tortured soul that ever fell prey to despair, an anguished wail that vibrated through the void. Suddenly, the shadows twitched, and a flicker of light drew my attention above. An ethereal silhouette materialized, shimmering with purity, a stark contrast against the all-encompassing darkness. It was a woman, eyes like shining stars, her hair cascading like strands of moonlight. "We can save you," she whispered, her voice smooth and calming, yet edged with urgency. "Before it's too late." "Who are you?" I could barely believe my eyes. "Why are you here?" "I am a guide, one who comes when the world swallows its own," she breathed, glancing at the swirling darkness from which I barely had the strength to pull away. "But you must choose, now. Follow the light, or succumb to the shadows. Either choice will seal your fate." As I gathered the fragmented shards of my will, dread unfurled in my stomach. Behind her, the figure lurked, shrouded in darkness but unmistakably vicious, a predator waiting for its chance. "Choose wisely," it hissed, forcing my heartbeat to quicken as I choked on the weight of despair. The ethereal woman extended her hand, and instinctively, it felt warm, inviting. I hesitated, torn between the glimmer of salvation and the shackles of my own fears. Behind her, the others pressed closer, their eyes wide with desperation, silently begging for my resolution. "Don't listen to her." The boy's voice surged, cracking through the air with a wildness that made my blood run cold. "It's a trick. It'll take you all. Stay with us, and we can be free, or lose yourself forever." The figure interjected, its voice a guttural growl that reverberated through the air like thunder. "You think they care for you? They only want you for their selfish ends. You know nothing of your true power." The clashing words collided in a cacophony that rattled my senses and spun my mind, blinding me to the choices ahead. I clawed at the ground, trying to remain anchored while the shadows clawed at my ankles, pulling me further into their grip. We can end this. The voices cried, now a distorted chorus chanting a single, hypnotic mantra. Join us. Be born anew in the shadows, N.O. I shouted, shaking my head violently as if I could clear the sound from my mind. The beacon of light flickered just before me, shimmering with impossible hope that promised refuge. But with every heartbeat that passed, the shadows surged, a relentless tide that threatened to drown me. Fear surged within me like a tempest. Would I truly lose the last slivers of humanity that flickered within? With one final surge of strength, I sprang towards the light, a desperate leap for what could be my only chance at escape. It felt like flying, like breaking free from chains that bound me, as I reached for the woman's hand, but just as my fingertips brushed against her warmth, a scream sliced through the air, a sound so piercing and filled with despair that it echoed within the depths of my soul. The boy with the crooked smile erupted into a fit of myriads of fractured faces, clawing toward me as the darkness waxed and waned, snapping like a ravenous beast. No. Stay. Don't leave us. In that instant, the laughter returned, multiplied by 1,000 sorrows, as I felt the shadows curling around my ankles like the arms of the damned. The weight of their collective despair pulled at my essence, and with one last jarring breath, the veil ripped apart. Time fractured, drowning reality in a swirling eddy of uncertainty. And then the world shattered. The light imploded, darkness consumed all, and all I could hear was one final, chilling whisper, "You made your choice." I fell into an abyss of clawing shadows, my soul rippling with terror as the laughter faded, echoing away into nothingness. Or was it the beginning of something far worse? Welcome home, it purred as the darkness welcomed me, hundreds of voices wrapping around my consciousness, suffocating me in a eulogy of despair. And then everything went black. As the blackness enveloped me, I floated in a surreal void, suspended between consciousness and despair. Silenced by an all-consuming dread, I felt myself drift further from the light, lost in an indescribable weight that pressed against my chest like a tombstone. Images flickered before me, once haunting and familiar, yet warped and grotesque reflections of my own fears and memories. Gradually, shapes began to coalesce in the darkness, grotesque silhouettes morphing into surreal recreations of those I'd left behind. A chaotic jumble of faces, twisted in shock and horror, clamored for my attention, their mouths moving in anguished cries I couldn't hear. It was as though they had been snatched from their lives, caught in a relentless loop of despair, longing for release yet condemned to this eerie fate. And amid the cacophony, there was an unsettling familiarity to the figures. Their eyes seemed to pin me down, beseeching me for recognition. Could they sense who I was? Did they understand that I'd crossed some ethereal threshold, rendering their cries etched into the very fabric of my mind? Help! They echoed, their calls transformed into a ghastly chant, the weight of their anguish pricking at my resolve. Help us find peace. Let us leave this world. Panic seared through my being. What do you want? I screamed into the void, desperate for clarity in a scene that pulsed with confusion. The darkness responded with a cold laugh that slithered through the air like smoke, wrapping around my throat, squeezing tight. Peace? Is that what you seek? A voice emerged from the depths, smooth as silk yet laced with malice. It was the figure from before, its form shifting, taking on the outlines of those around me. They wish for what you denied. Thema release. And you, oh dear child, are their ticket to salvation. As that sinister presence encroached, I felt the weight of their longing settling upon my heart. No. I cried, horrified at the thought. I don't have the power to free you. I cannot shoulder your agony. Tendrils of darkness reached for me, clawing and scratching at the edges of my sanity, weaving through my memories, dragging forth fragments from my life, scattering them before me like broken glass. Each piece cut deep, exposing vulnerabilities I thought long buried. My father's disappointed glare, my mother's tear-streaked face, the twisted remnants of friendships lost to time, all observed and twisted into cruel reflections of failure. Face your truths, child, the voice taunted as I stumbled over the shards of my past. Your choices have forged this very reality. You were always meant to be here, tethered to their cries. Disappointment and regret bind you to this realm. As if conjured by my thoughts, the anguished faces reached out. The boy with the crooked smile lunged towards me, his features rendering in grotesque intensity. "You have to help us," he cried, his eyes wide with fear, once more adding layers to my guilt. "Why would I help the likes of you?" I growled, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and despair. "You all chose to stay. You let your fears bind you," but the shadows pressed closer, dozens of voices merging into a single wave of pleading, drowning out my protests, their arms straining to pull me into their torment. "We were trapped here because of you. Because you could have saved us." The ground beneath me began to sway, vibrating like a living entity, and with each moment I could feel the edges of my sanity fraying. Just when I thought I could lose myself completely within the despair that clawed at my essence, an overpowering wave ripped through the darkness. A new presence erupted. In stark contrast to the suffocating blackness, a blinding light shone bright in my periphery. It felt like hope, its warmth instantly driving back the shadows, cutting through the chaos. Yet this time, the light was different. It flickered uncertainly, pulsing like a dying star. "Can you feel it?" A new voice ventured, one that carried with it a sharp intelligence, almost playful. The figure was cloaked in radiant energy, an emerald mist swirling around it, tugging gently at my spirit. "Your soul hangs in balance, and the cost for freedom is steep. But each choice shatters reality further." "Who are you?" I struggled against the pressure of despair, torn between the sinister whispers urging my allegiance to the shadows, and the dazzle demanding that I break free into the light. "Simply a conductor of truths, one who can guide you. But know that all roads lead deeper into the dark." The voice teased, its tone both inviting and ominous. "Tell me. What do I have to do?" My heart raced against the mounting tension. A choice loomed, palpable and electric, yet before I could fully comprehend, a rumble broke the silence. The shadows erupted, swirling around me with newfound hunger. "We're not finished here," they snarled, faces twisted in rage as they surged with renewed vigor. As the light flickered, its grip weakened, I faced down a tidal wave of anger, stirring memories, and a visceral terror that begged me to choose fast. "Choose your fate or be consumed by those you failed," the light hissed, the voice now tinged with urgency, and then, from the depths of the shadowed horde, a face emerged that turned my blood to ice. My own, contorted and malevolent. "Join us," it whispered, lips curling into a cruel smile. "Let's make a home together." The ground buckled, shadows spiraled upward like a vortex, and just before the darkness swallowed everything whole, the boy's voice pierced through the chaos one last time, pleading, direct. "If you leave us, you'll lose more than you can imagine. You will become one of them." With everything slipping away and options dwindling, the flickering light fell into like a darkened star slowly collapsing, both revolting and alluring, and I was left on the precipice, a chilling ultimatum burning in my chest, to confront the darkness within or risk losing my very soul in the process. I could feel the air thicken as choices bore down on me, the shadows clenching tighter, ready to seep into every fissure of my vulnerability, and then everything shattered once again, plunging me into a reality I couldn't fathom, an echo of my own choices haunting me into a suffocating silence. As the darkness solidified once more around me, an icy breeze swept through, sending shivers racing across my skin. The air thickened with an unsettling charge, like the moment before a storm. I felt the weight of the impossible choice I clung to. Heartbeat echoed with the cries of those I had left behind, threatening to drown my very existence. Then something shifted, the darkness curled inwards, revealing a narrow path ahead beckoning with a menacing charm. I hesitated, the familiarity gnawing at me. It was as if this narrow passage had always existed, waiting for me to abandon my resolve. My heart pounded as I scanned the ominous corridor. Jagged whispers wound their way around, murmurs stitched together in unearthly chant, a dreadful lullaby echoing from the depths of despair. "Come to us," they sang in twisted unison, the chorus swept over me with the poison of betrayal. "Embrace the darkness, you were never meant to stand in the light." The grotesque faces of familiar figures loomed around me, their eyes vacant yet pleading, their mouths moving in a synchronized imploration. "You belong here." With a trembling breath, I steeled myself, taking halting steps forward. The passage twisted like an esophagus, constricting tight around my chest, suffocating me with memories I had long buried beneath the weight of my denial. Each step breathed life into their agonies, the walls echoing images of lost faces that shimmered along the passageway, a surreal tapestry depicting every moment I wished to forget that I stumbled upon a door, worn and ancient, splattered with imprints of something dark and glistening. The air around felt thick and acrid. I knew instinctively that whatever lay beyond would not offer the solace I craved. Still, a dark curiosity drew me towards it. I reached for the cold handle, trembling fingers brushing against its rough edges. The grinding of metal on metal sent a shiver racing up my spine. With a deep breath, I swung the door open. The sight before me was more horrific than I could have ever imagined. A vast chamber unveiled itself, walls bleeding shadow and light, as silhouettes writhed and struggled against invisible chains. Despair hung thick, hovering like smoke, with a sickly sweet scent that tainted the air. The very essence of suffering radiated from the figures trapped within, their gnarled bodies twisting in contorted agony. Amidst the chaos, familiar faces emerged, their features drawn into expressions of torment that crushed every shred of hope. The boy with the crooked smile stood frozen, a wisp of light desperately fighting against the dark chains that bound him. You came, he rasped, his voice barely escaping between watery breaths. What happened to you? I gasped, a choking cry escaping my throat, grief slamming against my chest like a vice. A swirl of memories crashed over me, drowning out any rational thought. I couldn't look away. They said you would help us. He pleaded, eyes wide with terror. They said you could set us free. But I could see even through the haze the lines around his mouth twisted into a pitiful grin, the wall of shadows pulsated with a life of its own, playing my every mistake like a deranged film, each scene sketched into contours of despair so vivid I could taste the bitterness of their resentment. It was intoxicating and revolting at once. They fed on my guilt, and I felt their hunger clawing deeper into my heart. Why can't you just leave us be? I screamed, the walls trembling with the force of my voice. What do you want from me? The shadows melted at my query, and from this darkened womb, a laugh erupted sharp and jarring as if the very essence of pain found amusement in my agony. We want what you've denied us, dear. Freedom, and your shattered spirit feeds our power. Suddenly, the chamber flickered, a flash of blinding light erupting from nowhere. The brilliance hung in the air like a jewel dangling on a thread, illuminating every horrific detail. With it arose a new figure, a woman, her form bedecked in flowing robes of light and shadow, shifting between worlds with a grace that set my heart racing. Enough. She commanded, voice a clarion call that sliced through the agony. You will not claim another soul today. A fierce confrontation ignited as she charged against the darkness, the conflict uprooting the very ground I stood upon. The shadows hissed and recoiled, revealing glimpses of faces turning to me, their expressions morphing into something malignant. The chill of recognition washed over me. I could sense the familiar taste of betrayal hanging on their whispers. It's your fault. They screamed, the pressure climbing as the boy's face contorted into mine, eyes wide with betrayal. You will become one of us. In a violent surge, the chamber erupted, the very fabric of reality threatening to rip apart. I felt the shadows clawing at my body, pulling me between the dimensions I had longed to escape, while the woman glared fiercely at me, urgency etched upon her face. You must choose now. I took a step back, feeling the weight of time tangle around me, tightening like a vengeful serpent. If I don't choose, will I be lost forever? Your fate is rooted in the past, but you hold the power to rewrite it. Beneath the pressure of screaming shadows and the radiant light, my heart twisted painfully, torn between a reality I could no longer accept and the darkness clamoring for my submission. I reached for the brilliant light, desiring to shatter the bonds suffocating me, yet the chains of regret were relentless, and just as I grasped for the light, one final voice sent a tremor through my core, rising above the din. If you leave us, you'll never escape. The light flickered and dimmed, and as I stood on the knife edge of revelation, everything spiraled into an abyss of blackness until a deafening crack split the air, echoing with both promise and doom, and in that moment, reality shattered once more, revealing not just the depths of darkness, but something even worse, an unending labyrinth of horrors awaiting me on the other side. With the crack echoing in my mind, I stumbled backward, my senses reeling as the shadows surged forth to swallow the fading light. The world around me twisted like a writhing serpent, corridors spiraling into a ghastly kaleidoscope of fear, torment, and duplicity. A new impulse surged within me, a desperate need to escape this realm of suffering. But escape had become a cruel joke. The very air thickened, wrapping around me like barbed wire, each breath a defiance against the enveloping darkness. Whispers echoed from every direction, taunting, mocking, their insidious chant now impossibly multiplied. "You are ours, forever ours," they hissed, voices slipping through the seams of my sanity. As the light waned, I sprinted down the corridor, my heart pounding wildly in rhythm with my footsteps. The shadows clawed at my ankles, tendrils of darkness snaking around my legs, threatening to pull me back into the suffocating void. I fought against their pull, pushing forward with sheer will, the faces of those I had lost imprinted on my mind, urging me onward. Through broken doorways littered with remnants of a life long abandoned, I charged into yet another chamber. This one held a horrifying spectacle. The walls pulsated with blood-red hues, and in the center lay a great pit, wreathed in an infernal smoke that curled upwards, clinging like fingers desperate for a grip. The air reeked of charred flesh and despair, hammering against my senses. As I peered into the pit, my breath caught in my throat. Bodies twisted in agonizing contortions, half submerged in a murky sludge that absorbed their cries like a sponge, their features twisted and grotesque, their eyes burned with an unfathomable longing as they reached out to me. My name sizzled on their lips, a gasping chant of regret that stabbed deep into my psyche. It was an echo of the past coming back to haunt me. "Help us," they moaned, tongues flickering like snakes as they sought connection in this nightmare. "You know us. You left us behind. Save us." A visceral horror gripped my chest, an immense weight threatening to crush me under the suffocating mantle of guilt. I staggered away from the pit, heart racing against the gnawing realization of my complicity. But the shadows were relentless, they swirled with fervor, the pulsating tendrils forming into figures, ghostly replicas of those I feared I had failed. "Do you remember?" The boy's voice pierced through, echoing from the depths of my conscience. "You chose bliss over truth. You can't silence us." Raging fury erupted from the pit like molten lava, surging upwards to engulf me in a wave of raw anguish. The smoky mist transformed, reshaping into monstrous beings, half-formed and trailing shreds of my past, each a reminder of a promise left broken. I was trapped in this horrifying menagerie, reflections of my choices materializing before my horror-struck eyes. Desperate, I turned to flee as the wailing grew louder, a cacophony of sorrow resonating in the very marrow of my bones. Scanning my surroundings, I spotted an arcane door etched with ancient symbols, a distillation of knowledge that beckoned like a siren's song. My heart screamed against the notion of turning back, but the visage of my loved ones, twisted and tormented, spurred me onward. Breaking free from the nightmarish allure of the pit, I sprinted towards that door, every ounce of dread vibrating in my veins, the walls trembling as I approached. With trembling hands, I grasped the handle, feeling the icy chill seeping into my skin. "What awaits you is far worse than what you have faced." A voice thundered from behind me, rippling through the air like icy daggers. I dared not look back, fear igniting a primal instinct to survive. Turn away, or become one with the void, but my body betrayed me, slackened resolve giving way to the darkness that wrapped around my heart. I pulled the door open, a shriek escaping my throat as I was enveloped in the engulfing blackness, the shadows weaving through my mind and sinking into the marrow of my soul. Inside, I found myself in an infinite expanse, the air shimmering with desolation. I was flung into visions beyond comprehension. Each flicker brought memories rushing back, collapsing together like dying stars. I saw every betrayal, every moment where I put myself before them, and every innocent life that had crumbled beneath my neglect. Suddenly, an icy grip clamped around my wrist, a sensation that sent electric shockwaves of terror coursing through me. I turned, and gasped. A face I dared not recognize stared back at me through muddy eyes. "I've been waiting," the figure rasped, lips curling into an irreverent smile that split the air like laughter. "To finally claim what you owe, a soul for a soul." Outrage boiled within, battling despair, as the shadows coiled tighter, ready to claim me. I knew with chilling clarity that the essence hovering before me held the power to command my fate. With panic taking root, I lashed out, wrenching free from its grasp, but the darkness began to congeal, forming broader shapes that asserted their dominance, mounting their assault within this surreal nightmare. And just as I thought I could run, the ground crumbled beneath me. The world twisted, collapsing into an overwhelming black maw that threatened to consume every remnant of light remaining. Welcome home, the shadows cackled in unison, their voices an insidious symphony of doom that echoed through the abyss. As the void yawning wider beckoned me to my end, the last flicker of thought pierced through an image of the boy, lost to the shadows but intertwined with a completely different face, a face I had hoped never to see again. Just as I felt myself fall into the depths, the abyss whispered the final Aurora name I had long since buried. And in that moment of suspended terror, the truth shattered my last shred of sanity. I felt my body plummet into a frigid abyss, time distorting as agonizing memories surged around me. I was not alone, no matter how far I fell, they were with meth shadows, merciless and everlasting. I twisted and turned, suffocated by the weight of screaming souls clawing at my consciousness, memories swirling like trapped specters yearning for release. But soon, the ground collided with my body, a shocking jolt pulling me into harsh reality once more. Lying within that dark expanse, my heart raced as the whispers of the damned surrounded me. "You're bound to us," they lamented. "You chose surrender over saving them." Faces flickered before me, and among the many, I saw the boy's crooked smile morph into something ghastly. The boy I failed, the faces of Gina and the others trapped in their eternal cries. Yet one visage cut deeper than the rest, a mirror mimicking my own, eyes mirroring both terror and twisted glee. "You always felt it, didn't you?" It taunted, the voice an echo of my own. "You've given up on saving them before even stepping into the light. You can never escape." A piercing laughter erupted from it, a cruel cacophony of despair that echoed within the cavern I now inhabited. Staring into my own reflection twisted within shadows, I felt the chains of regret bind tighter, squeezing out every ounce of resolve. The shackles of my guilt thrashed like serpents, entwining my limbs and wrapping around my neck, constricting until vision faded. I rioted against my bindings, desperate to claw back against the mounting despair, but the effort was in vain against the consuming force drawing closer. "You see, child," the figure crooned, its edges pulsating grotesquely. "You're anchored here because you were never meant to leave. Each choice you hesitated to take only chained you further. You sacrificed them all and became one with your failures." And in that moment, clarity struck. A painful revelation illuminated the darkness. The source of the horror wasn't just the supernatural entity hunting me, the malevolent darkness feeding on despair. It was the choices I made, the lives I let slip away like grains of sand. I couldn't choose to save one over the other, because they were all bound together by threads of my inaction. "You see their faces?" The grotesque shadow continued, "Each lives lost due to hesitation, misery shackled to your heart. Accept this fate or forever linger in regret." A scream clawed its way up my throat, but the darkness silenced me, stifling every guttural plea for release. I was not merely tormented, I was condemned, immersed in the fabric of the very horror I had fled from. As the shadowy void embraced me, I felt the faces of the lost surging beyond the periphery of my vision. Hollow eyes burned with despair, a haunting reminder of the consequences my decisions wrought. Suddenly, a wave of resolve blazed within me, a desperate flicker against the darkness threatening to engulf me whole. I could not be their instrument of grief. I couldn't allow their screams to be my ending. I would face the shadows. I won't succumb to this despair. I shouted, fighting with every ounce of my breath, willing the echoes of the lost to quiet. "You can't have me. I see you. I understand my failures, but I am not yours to keep." The laughter came to a shattering halt, a chilling quiet following as my declaration echoed throughout the void. For a fleeting second, the shadows thinned, but then they invaded my space, swirling and choking my resolve, melding with the darkness around me. "Will you fight, then?" mocked my reflection, inching closer. "Are you willing to claim your truth? Let's see if you can confront the horrors you've created." In a violent surge, the world twisted, unveiling a mirror, a grotesque map of shadowy pathways stretching to eternity, each twisted road leading to the specters of my past. You cannot escape the burden of your reality, it whispered, voices harmonizing into a taunting song, beckoning, pulling me to the edges of my own failures. With each step into the memory-laden corridors, the weight of despair was palpable, the faces of the lost gravitating around me, a cacophony rising and falling, as if inviting me closer into their realm of torment. The walls whispered their stories, cruel mockeries of my decisions and fears, but I could not yield. I pressed forward, navigating the shade-laden paths where once stood kind faces, once filled with laughter, each aberration a monument to the choices I wish I could revise. I should have reached out. I screamed, desperation spiraling out of control as I stumbled through the shadows of my twisted past. Forgive me. But as my voice echoed, the malignant shadows recoiled yet again, morphing the air around me into a symphony of anguished cries. You cannot have them back, nor can you change their fate. The bittersweet melody murmured, and suddenly, I understood redemption would not be found in pleading but in acknowledgement. Pain surged through me as every visage of despair clenched tight in my chest. I don't wish to fight against you, I sobbed, heart racing, I want you to be remembered. To find peace. A tremor surged through the abyss, a moment of stillness, a flicker of doubt as the dark figure stared at me, confusion resonating through its mirthless smile. You think those who linger with shadows can be saved by acknowledgement? That belief alone transforms fate. It's enough for me to keep your memory alive, I stammered, trembling yet determined. I'm sorry. The names poured forth, the memories fluttered through my mind, Gina, the boy, each previous interaction converging like flares lighting the darkness. Each name drew the ironic reluctance from the shadows encompassing me. All at once, the figures spun about me, tethered by sorrow yet drawn from their anguish, like moths towards a flame. You seek peace for them? It rumbled, uncertainty blooming in its tone. Then abandon your own desires. You will forever be linked, never free of threads forged in guilt. Release me, and I will remember, I asserted, unwilling to waver, determined to bridge the chasm of despair. But allow me to pass, to move forward. Suddenly the understanding crashed within. Medhat darkness need not be a prison, and haunting fears could become flames for remembrance instead. The shadows writhed and twisted against my burgeoning resolve, but I felt the grasp of their despair shift, a retreating tide washing against the edges of my consciousness. Then it happened that a deafening shriek pierced the void, rupturing through the air like thunderous cries where anguish met liberation. Shadows untangled from my limbs, flowing back into the abyss and bursting apart as I grasped at the flickering light before me. A single moment reignited by bravery above fear. But just as I crossed over that precipice of hope, the laughter erupted anew. You see? It roared, reverberating through the darkness. You can't leave me behind. But I pushed forward, clarity surging within me, and at that very moment, as the shadows of lost souls clung to me, I proclaimed with all the fervor I could muster, you're wrong. You can never have my spirit, my soul. I will live for those you devoured, so let me go. In that confrontation, the wayward threads of time warped again, shadows tearing at each other, isolating down to a singular hue of grief. The boundaries between us began to fray, as the whispers morphed into reluctant acceptance, fading into silence, a haunting reminder at least my anguish could become an echo over the void. Suddenly the abyss split apart, and in one vibrant surge, I was thrust through the pulsating wall of darkness. Light beamed down, engulfing me in warmth, and as I felt the weight of 1,000 chains drop from my body, clarity washed over me that I was freed. The horror faded like mist in dawn, and yet then came the chilling whisper. You chose to leave. So easily. And as dim shadows swarmed, closing the fractures of existence as I'm propelled into reality, I realized the truth. I would forever be haunted by the choices I left behind. Even with freedom, I remained bound to shadows. The laughter echoed louder, taunting me because I would carry the burden of the lost forever. They would live through me, and my heart would never forget, nor would I relinquish their memory. Then came the last chilling halt as the whisper kissed my ear, sending icy dread down my spine. You cannot escape the dark. We will always belong together. And suddenly, clarity shattered. I stood in my room once more, keys upon the table, shadows flickering against the wall, the TV casting ghostly images against the peeling wallpaper. As I gazed down the hall into familiar yet dread-laden shadows, the door lay ajar, the whispers heralding from beyond. I shuddered. The wall of darkness grinned wider, and then it uttered, "Welcome home, dear friend," a grotesque smile stretching in the very corners of my reality, and in that moment, I understood, the horror would never truly cease, for it had seeped into my very being, leaving its fingerprints across the very fabric of my mind. I now belonged to the shadows, forever intertwined, caught perennially in the delicate web of choices unmade. The last whisper lingered hauntingly in the air, a promise of horrors still untold. "Remember, dear heart, you can never truly leave."